everybody? Thank you so much for watching. Welcome to another video, and today I'm reacting to part of a Candace Owens video. I don't do a whole lot of reaction videos on my channel because I do find them fun to do, but I also feel like it's important to put your own ideas out there as well, so I really don't want them to take over my channel. So if you enjoy this reaction video, don't worry, you probably will see more. I just don't do them a whole lot. The title of her video makes you think that she's about to criticize the sexual liberation movement, sexual freedom movement, whatever you want to call it. And honestly, as much as I don't really like Candace Owens, I was curious to see what she had to say. Yeah, it's just a bunch of victim-blaming bullshit. In the second half of the video that I don't cover, she refers to the docu-series about the Playboy Mansion, and since I haven't seen it, I don't really want to comment on that too much. But you're not missing too much. The first half of the video is quite the whopper, so let's get into it.
Safe to say that we were glad we made that extra investment. We were also glad that the car doors were locked. Not that we would have deserved to have our car broken into if they weren't, but it's of course always good to take necessary precautions.
Okay, so for the record, it gets worse. A lot worse. But necessary precautions. Necessary precautions. Well, it seems like if women wanted to take necessary precautions to protect themselves from sexual assault and rape, they would have to first identify what the problem is. But heaven forbid you say in front of a conservative that men are the problem. I'm sorry, but if you want to talk about this issue, it is simply a fact that men are responsible for the vast majority of these kinds of crimes. But if you start talking like that, conservatives will accuse you of hating men, fearing men, pushing the idea that all men are toxic. So, question, how do we take necessary precautions and have open discussions about it without offending the conservatives? Because conservatives really don't handle it well at all when you state accurately that men are what you should be afraid of in this subject matter. You can't shut down the conversation and then complain that people aren't having it. Even if it's not at all your intention to paint all men as monsters, conservatives just always seem to take it that way whenever women, especially liberal women, talk about this as if it's doing something wrong. But wait, you're also going to lecture us on not taking necessary precautions. Men are what we should be fearful of. Men are what we should be protecting ourselves from. Stating that because it's a reality that men are responsible for the vast majority of these crimes is not something wrong or immoral or evil. It's just a fact, babe. But conservatives never seem able to handle that. Which is fine, It's very typical for them to lecture the rest of us on things that they themselves cannot handle. That's just kind of what they do. That's their thing. So if you're gonna criticize people who try to have this open conversation of how women can protect themselves from men, then please stop. The threat to women in these situations is men. Full stop. Sorry.
Years ago, stuff like this used to be considered common sense across every category. But at some point in the early 70s, there was one space that marked itself safe from common sense: the women's movement, feminism.
I will be the first to say I'm not the biggest fan of feminism in general. I think the biggest issue for me is that there seems to be a lot of hypocrisy. I see a lot of feminists who want to complain about sexism, for example, against women, but they see no problem making these broad general statements about men. So it's a little hard to take seriously. Those are the kind of things I criticize feminism for. I don't criticize feminism for existing because I'm sorry, but for a long time, feminism was very necessary. Make whatever your argument you want to about whether or not it's necessary today, but given what's going on in today's society, I think feminism is very relevant today. And by the way, feminism is also responsible for a lot of protections for women on this very subject matter. Is that some kind of problem for Candace? Look, I think feminism does deserve criticism for certain things, but to make these blanket statements that feminism in general is awful, no. Feminism has made great advancements for women, and both of us benefit from that, whether we want to recognize it or not.
Around this time, women began heavy talk about sexual freedom and positivity. No longer would we be restrained by the ideas of yesteryear. Make him a sandwich? He can make it himself. I'll be outside naked.
Now here's a common caricature of the feminist made by a conservative. Ugh, so funny. So this is one of the things that made me realize that conservatives are full of crap. We'll get to another one in a minute. There were so many things I was told about other groups, about how they view the world and how they think, that once I actually got out of that bubble and started listening, I realized was a bunch of made up BS. There are plenty of feminists who very much enjoy cooking for their families. Like, the idea that prepping food or serving food or cooking food is something that just absolutely drives feminists batshit crazy is a myth. That's not what the problem is. The problem is women being told you must do this because you're a woman. That is the problem. There are plenty of feminists who enjoy cooking for their families. That's something a lot of people enjoy doing. They just don't want to be expected and told that they have to do that because they're a woman, and they don't want to see other women who aren't like that and don't enjoy cooking or can't cook or don't want to cook for family, don't feel like they should have to. They don't want women like that to be given a hard time for it. It's about women having choices and freedom to make decisions for different kind of lifestyles instead of being put into this box that a lot of us do not fit into. And I think Candace Owens knows that damn well. This is just one of those things they like to throw out there and hope it sticks.
The sexual freedom movement is what has brought us to this cultural moment of the day where, if you'd like to, you can attend, ready? A slut march. I'm not kidding. There's an annual slut march that takes place where women parade around half naked to remind you that they are free.
So as much as I do consider myself sexually open-minded, so to speak, I am probably, just by nature of my personality and who I am as a person, much more traditional than a lot of people who would attend a slut march. I probably would never do that, but that's more a matter of just feeling like that's not for me as opposed to having an actual problem with it. The idea behind a slut march is that women should not feel ashamed of their sexuality, their sexual experiences, their sexual pleasure, and that I don't particularly think is a bad thing.
The idea is simple. If you suggest to a woman that she shouldn't walk around half naked and drink, just as an example, because there are predators in the world, then you would be the problem.
You are not the problem, you are part of the problem, okay? Let's take conservatives complaining about how they're targeted for their political views. And you know what? Some of them are. So not all of it is made up stuff, I get it. But what leads to that? The rhetoric and the mantras that conservatives are dangerous and must be stopped. If there was less of that rhetoric, there would be fewer conservatives targeted. Does that not make sense? Now, individuals who are going to have it in them to commit sexual violence against other people, I don't think are necessarily going to be swayed too much by trends, but I think this kind of thing does have an impact on how people act. But I'm also not coming at this just from the perspective of what would lead to fewer sexual assaults and rape. When you have people like this out there making excuses as to why rapists are somehow not the only ones responsible for their actions, first of all, we're reaching a certain level of stupid, and that's a problem. It is absolutely ridiculous to suggest that anyone other than a rapist is the person responsible for the rape. But I don't care whether or not Candace Owens chooses to recognize this. Her little speech here is nothing but blaming victims for things that happened to them. It's absolutely ridiculous. Let's say a conservative makes a TikTok video and it's really outrageous and the whole point is to go out there and push buttons and get as much clicks, get as much shares, get as much heat going, get all these people fired up and angry at them. And then they end up getting fired because of what they did. Conservatives are constantly arguing that in that circumstance, it's not the actions of the individual who did whatever it is they did, it's the actions of the mob or the company or the media who targeted them. People who have this kind of logic, it's just about having hatred towards women and trying to pretend they're doing something positive with this kind of bullshit commentary. First of all, you're not. Second of all, there are so many situations where you would not apply this same logic, because at the end of the day, you don't really believe that. The second thing that made me realize that conservatives were absolutely full of shit, one of the many things really, is how little they actually believe in personal responsibility. If you lose your house because of some issue with your job, oh hell no, that's nobody else's problem, that's your personal responsibility. There are just so many circumstances where if something happens to you, conservatives still see fit to lecture you on your personal responsibility in the situation. If you believe that someone committing an act is not responsible for their actions, but there's in fact shared responsibility between their victim, the person who had something done to them, explain to me the logic in that. First of all, that's just not logical. But second of all, it is a moral outrage, this kind of commentary. And it is reflected in our court system. There are judges and attorneys who will ask women why they didn't do more to prevent their own rape in courtrooms. Okay, so this is why this stuff grinds my gears so much. Anybody can sit down and make a video and talk about their opinion and share it online, that kind of stuff. But this stuff is not innocent. And the more that this kind of viewpoint becomes popular, the more we're gonna see it in courtrooms. And the more we see it in courtrooms, guess what that means? Lesser sentences for rapists. Because heaven forbid that men be considered responsible for their actions.
If that said woman decided anyways to go out to a bar half naked and she got inebriated and she landed herself into a terrible situation, perhaps even leading to her sexual assault or rape, it is in no way her fault. You've heard the repeated short skirt analogy. Essentially, if you believe there is anything that a woman could have done differently to prevent her own assault, then you are a victim blamer, or worse, a rape apologist.
Landed herself in a terrible situation. Candace Owens is just a terrible goddamn person, okay? She really is. This bitch is a piece of work. And yes, she is a rapist apologist. I don't see women like Candace Owens giving this same kind of energy to holding rapists accountable for what they have done. You care more about telling women how to change their behavior than you do to tell men to not hurt women. Now, obviously, telling men not to hurt women is not going to eliminate all of these violent crimes. I think a lot of people who push that mentality on the left are a little bit misguided. But my point is, how can you have so much energy to take out on victims, but not that kind of energy to take out on the perpetrators? What kind of person do you have to be? You know, there was a story about a sexual assault a few years ago that the Daily Wire went nuts over because why? Because it involved a boy wearing a skirt, which is right up the alley for their kind of content. You know what? I would have more respect for you if you would just straight up say, I don't give a damn about rape victims, than to be the kind of person who only cares about stories or victims when it suits your agenda. That's who these people are. And to act like all of this is okay because it's just common sense, you know, first of all, it's not common sense. It's not, okay? So, for example, at the beginning of the video, she mentions her car almost being broken into, and with this thank goodness we locked the doors kind of thing. And I don't understand when these victim-blaming morons try to bring up subjects like robbery or carjacking or these other kind of crimes and be like, well, if the victim basically advertised, can't you see how that's not? No. No, 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 no. The perpetrator is still the one who is fully responsible for their actions. The victim of a crime still does not deserve a lecture on their behavior. They act like if you somehow remove rape or sexual assault from the conversation, that makes it okay. No. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. If I am out and I've got a wad of cash in my wallet and when I'm paying for stuff, I'm making sure people see my money and I'm flaunting it, and someone decides to follow me and knock me to the ground and steal my wallet, I'm still the victim of a crime. You know, one thing I do give conservatives credit for is that on most subjects, with the exception of a few, as you can see, they're actually cool with like holding criminals accountable and stuff. You know, so it's like on the one hand, like you almost want to root for them sometimes when they speak about certain subjects. Because so many on the left are just so soft on crime and they think it's okay, and I think it's a damn joke. But then they start talking like this, and it's just like, you had so much potential. It's almost like these conservative commentators, like, they want to crack down on crime, but they're also somehow just cool with all of us having to live in fear of criminals. What's the point of cracking down on crime if you believe that our lifestyles should be centered around what criminals are going or not going to do? Take things like identity theft. We're all used to not sharing our passwords, maybe going through extra measures to make sure our accounts are secure, things like that. We've all just kind of accepted that as part of life, but that shouldn't be how we have to freaking live. We shouldn't have to worry about our identities being stolen. We shouldn't have to worry about someone following us home if they know we have money. Why are conservatives so okay with us having to change our lifestyles and change our behavior and change how we think, all to accommodate the criminals around us? I don't believe we should have to accommodate the criminals around us. Me and Candace are just gonna have to disagree on that one.
Don't blame the short skirt, blame the rapist. No nuances applied. Of course, if our SUV was unlocked in a public garage with a stack of cash in the front seat and it was consequentially broken into, the police might offer to us, in the future, you guys have really got to remember to lock your car door at night, especially in these public lots. That would be considered sound advice. Only a fool would shout back to that police officer, "Burglar apologist!" But the messaging to young women today is radically different. Sexual freedom most nearly means throwing caution to the wind.
Okay, a conservative commentator saying no nuances applied is laughable. Just laughable. Okay. But I love how she says that statement, "Don't blame the short skirt, blame the rapist," as if she's mocking it. Like, how is that not common sense? It just really goes to show that people who want to speak out about these kinds of issues are in no way willing to educate themselves on these issues. A lot of rapists, there might be something visually about their victim that they like, find themselves attracted to, whatever, but a lot of rapists rape because of power, their need to feel power over their victim. It's not always a matter of sexual attraction to their victim. And also, this is a subject that has been covered many, many times. The idea that if you're exposing enough skin, you're automatically going to attract the attention of someone who is a predator. I would encourage Candace to explain how people are raped when they are wearing loose jeans, or long shirts, or long dresses that look like they're part of a religious group. There are people who wear burqas who are raped. Like, you know, so even aside from the fact that I don't like it and have a moral problem with it, it doesn't make any logical sense to blame the short skirt, you moron. And I don't care what anybody says, dressing modestly does not mean that you're going to be protected from anything. That is absolutely foolish, and I have zero patience for people who give other people false hope. Also, again, if you have a problem with people saying things like "don't blame the short skirt or blame the rapist," then maybe you shouldn't be out here lecturing the rest of us on personal responsibility, because apparently you never know where it goes. Throwing caution to the wind. I am not a fan of activists who present sex as something that has zero consequences, that kind of thing. But no matter what I do or you do or someone else does, violent criminals are the ones who are responsible for violent crime. Does anyone else feel like Candace Owens is going to be one of those idiot moms who gave the advice? I don't know how many of y'all got this growing up. Was anyone else told this growing up? This advice to prevent kidnapping? If someone ever tries to kidnap you, don't let them take you to a second location because your chances of survival decrease. Do you not know what a kidnapping is? It's being taken against your will, dummy. Hello? I mean, seriously, that's the advice. The best way to not get kidnapped is to just not let yourself get kidnapped. Oh, thank goodness you're here. Thank goodness you're here. Like, and I guess if I don't want to get robbed, I just shouldn't let myself get robbed. Is that how that works? But if you really think that there's no harm in telling people who have had something done to them that they should have taken precautions, I think you're an absolute moron. I think you're a heartless, immoral person. But I also feel like if I were to sit down with her and talk about precautions, she would give me dumb advice like that. Like, if you don't want something bad to happen, don't let it happen. Great! Thanks. Appreciate it. Like, I just feel like it would really be like stupid advice that isn't going to protect you from anything, or in most circumstances, it's just not going to really, I mean, come on. But at the end of the day, aside from my little sarcastic remarks and all this other bullshit, the reality is that this is something very harmful, this is something very serious, and for people who want to act like this is something innocent, it's not innocent. Okay, this kind of mentality, the more it grows, the more we're going to see it in our court system, and what does that mean? Lower and lower sentences for people who commit violent sexual acts. I have never been the victim of rape, but I did have we'll just say an incident, and I wasn't really sure how to handle the situation, and I was talking to family members about it, and instead of being supportive, instead of showing me any love at all, I was told that I should not have been there, and that I should probably learn self-defense. Fuck you. From the bottom of my heart. What kind of person do you have to be to actually think that's an okay way to handle that situation? Who are you? Who are you? I don't care who you are, but if that's how you would actually behave, if someone told you about something traumatic and violating and awful that they went through, you are not capable of love. And honestly, that's how I got through it. I didn't speak to this person for a while. I was extremely hurt. But eventually I just got to the point where I just realized this person is not capable of loving me. And the sooner I accept that, the better off things will be. So I'm in contact with that person now, but I don't ever expect them to treat me with love because they're not capable of that. And I know that. And before I go, I do want to share some brief statistics. These are from Rain, who compiled these from a few different sources. I think the main one was the Department of Justice. 94% of women who are raped experience symptoms of PTSD during the 2 weeks following the rape. 30% of women report symptoms of PTSD 9 months after the rape. I can only imagine actually experiencing a rape, or how long I would be struggling with it. I cannot imagine. 33% of women who are raped contemplate suicide. 13% of women who are raped attempt suicide. People who have been sexually assaulted are more likely to use drugs than the general public. They are 6 times more likely to use cocaine and 10 times more likely to use other major drugs. We are talking about circumstances that involve serious, serious trauma. And if you really think that someone who is in that circumstance, experiencing that kind of pain, deserves to be kicked when they are down, you are truly evil. I don't care how many mental gymnastics you want to go through to convince yourself it's okay. It's not. The main reason is because I think it's absolutely wrong to suggest that rapists are only kind of partially responsible for what they've done. It's really a shared responsibility between the two parties. That's just fucked up. And don't try to give me that, oh, 2 things can be true at once bullshit. Okay, you're full of shit. It just blows my mind that someone really thinks that someone who has been raped should be guided by the police, that she shouldn't have been in that situation. I cannot imagine being such a cold-blooded bitch. And before I go, I just want to make a final point, because of course, the way people justify this stuff is to say, well, I'm just saying what's true. It's kind of like when conservatives talk about the subject of obesity. They go around calling people fat, and then if someone takes offense, acting like they're doing something good. I'm just helping people understand what's wrong with their lives. I'm just worried about their health. Shut the fuck up. You're just a jackass, and you don't want to take responsibility for your actions. But of course you're conservatives, so you want to lecture everyone else on the responsibility they have for their actions. What about the way that conservatives today are on this horrible trend where they're calling anyone, pretty much anyone they disagree with, let's just be frank, groomers, okay? All right, well, let's take actual grooming. Let's say I'm a teacher and I want to take advantage of the situation. I have a classroom of first graders and I want to talk about really sexually explicit material and discussions in the classroom. Can I justify that by stating, oh, well, these are all just true things about sexuality? Does that make it okay? Does that make it okay? Stating that something is true does not mean that you are not responsible for completely ignoring the context of your actions or your statements. And quick side note, a lot of times when conservatives say that they're stating something truthful and therefore no one should hold it against them, they're not saying something truthful anyway, so it's just kind of this weird little circle of bullshit. For example, with the obesity thing, a lot of them seem to think that they can take one look at somebody and tell them what is wrong with them or not wrong with them based on their appearance. That is not real. You can pretend all you want to that that's real, but that's not how that works. Like remotely, like at all. But even if it were true, you truly are an evil person if you think that someone who has just been raped should be told that they should have done something different. I do not understand how people like this live with themselves. I don't. Anyways, that is all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, half this video, or even just a quarter of this video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe.